Hey everybody, I got a few emails in the past about could I do a video on Photoshop layers and just cover the basics. These people are brand new to Photoshop. They know very little or anything about layers at all. So that's what this video is about. So if you know layers really well, you probably want to pass this up. Are we ready? Let's do it. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new to the channel, this is dedicated to photography and as a photo artist, pushing ourselves out of the box creatively. All right, so I got a few emails that came in through the past, and I was going through my diary every time I get an idea of what I should be doing as a possible video. Some requests with, hey, I am new to Photoshop, and could you just do some basic, simple things in layers so I have a better understanding? So that's what we're going to do right now. The other thing just to know, I'm going to break this up into 5 major segments here, a little bit on the lengthy side. So just, relax, watch this, and then go back and maybe watch it again. So for the new people, this is designed for you on sharing some of the common things that we actually use in Photoshop as a photographer. Are we ready? Let's dive into Photoshop right now. Okay, so right here, before we get started, I want to modify my interface here. So if I installed Photoshop and opened it up for the first time, this is what they call the essential layout. So over here under Window drop-down menu, you're going to see something called workspace. And there's an area that we can actually create a new workspace. So what I did before I show you mine is you can actually go get a panel like layers. This is what we're focusing on. So over here, I'm just going to click down and drag with the mouse and reposition this where I want it to go. You can increase the size of this. And again, just position it where you want. So since we're working in layers a lot in Photoshop, I want this standing out like this for myself. So once you get this designed the way you want, like you can open and close different panels. I'm not going to go into that because you don't know what to do yet until you get a good, strong workflow. You've been using the product for a while. You'll find out what you use a lot and what you don't, and what you don't, you can get rid of. You can always bring them back. But if I go over here to the Window drop-down menu again and come over here to Workspace, then I can just save this as a brand new workspace. It'll ask you to give it a name, and then you just choose Save. Now, I'm not going to do that here under Window drop-down menu. I already did one in advance under Workspace, and this is what I use for training purposes, and it's called My Workspace. When I click on that, it actually changes, and you can see that it's set up the way I like to work when I train. So again, just a quick review here. Sometimes I use channels in my training program, paths, libraries a lot, properties, adjustments once in a while, but mainly I'm going to get it from a drop-down menu here that we'll talk about a little bit later. But then I've got my layers panel right there. So now we're ready, set to go to work. So again, you could set this up the way you want to, and then remember, go to Windows, drop-down menu, Workspace, and then just choose New Workspace, give it a name, and that will be available to you. You can always go back to Workspace and choose Essentials. That is your default one from Adobe. All right, now that I got that out of the way, we're going to cover 5 major areas of working in layers. So let's get started. Okay, this is going to be the first segment out of 5. So let's jump right into Photoshop here. And the first thing I'm going to do is you can do Control-N or Command-N on an Apple computer, or just go to File drop-down menu, and I'm going to choose New. So we're going to start, say, a new project. I'm just going to use the default Photoshop size right there and select Create. Now, this is equivalent to saying, hey, I've got a white sheet of paper, and that's my first layer. It's a background layer. We'll talk about the rules of a background layer a little bit later, but it's like, here's my first layer right here in Photoshop, this white sheet of paper again. If I come down here to the box over here under layers, it's got a little plus on it. That is to create a brand new layer. Now, what that means when I click on this, you're going to see a new layer here on top of the white sheet of paper, let's say, and it's you won't see any color. It's just a checkerboard pattern. It means it's transparent. It's like me saying, hey, I've got this white sheet of paper, but I've got this clear plastic. I'm going to put the clear plastic on top. That's my new layer. But what do I see? I just see, again, the white color right there. So again, if I grab my paintbrush, B for brush, just for demo purposes here, I'll make sure I'm at 100%. I'll be painting in black. And as I do this and I paint on this, well, I'm not painting on the white sheet of paper. I'm painting on this layer, that clear plastic right there. So if I click on the eyeball, that just means right now it's visible. If I click on it, I'm temporarily hiding the visibility of that layer. So I can turn it on and off. The point is that I'm painting on this, not on this. Because if I grab my move tool now, I could go over here and move this to a different location. If I was painting on this, and that's the white sheet of paper, let's say, I would not be able to do that. So that's the beauty of breaking up your project in separate layers so you can manipulate these individually. Okay, so I just want to get that out of the way. Now the next thing, let me just delete that. And I'm going to add another layer. And what I want to do now is come over here to the black and white color chips here. I'm going to click on this once, and I'm going to choose in the color picker here, the color red. And now again, I'm on the new layer, a quick shortcut. If I do Alt-Delete on the keyboard, it filled that in with red. Another way of doing it is just going to the Edit drop-down menu, choose Fill, and then when this opens up, make sure it's set in the drop-down menu to foreground color, because again, that's our foreground color, that's red over here in the chip color. And then you would just click on OK, and it would fill it in with that color. Now, basically what happened here is I started out with a white sheet of paper. And then what I did was I added a new layer and filled it with red. So now I have a red sheet of paper. And what's happening is the red is covering the white. Okay, so that's what we see. If I go back to Photoshop and I hide that, now I see the white sheet of paper. Now I have the red sheet of paper back again. If I do this again, I'm going to add a new layer. And we're talking about stacking order here in a minute. So I'm going to fill that in. So I'm going to come over here to my color picker, and we'll do something in the yellow spectrum right there. And again, Alt-Delete. That should be Option Delete on a Mac. And that is, I've got my red sheet of paper, and I put a yellow one on top of that. So what do I see visually is the yellow sheet of paper. So if you look into Photoshop, that's what we see. If I grab the red sheet of paper, which is really a layer now, and if I click down with my mouse and drag up, I'm changing what's called the stacking order of layers. That's like me here with my sheets of paper. Let's see if I could find the red one. That's like me saying, okay, I've got a stack of papers here. If I take the red one out, let me see if I can do that, and I'm putting it on top. So what do we see? We see the red sheet of paper. So that's just called stacking order in Photoshop. So what we need to know is if you're working on a project, which I'll show you some examples here in a minute, and if I go over here to the background layer, and for some reason I want to move that up in my stacking order, I cannot. You cannot move a background layer until you click on the padlock to turn that off. Now it's a normal layer, and I can click and drag and move it anywhere I want in my stacking order. But if my layer is selected here, like I have, and I go to Layer drop-down menu, and I go to New, and I choose Background from Layer, I'm telling Photoshop, take that layer and make it my background layer. Well, if I do that, here's what's going to happen. It pushes it to the bottom. It has to. That is the rule of a background layer. It's always going to be your base layer at the very bottom. Okay, now with that said, if I go to the top layer and I grab, well, let's just say I tap on the letter E, and when I tap on the letter E on my keyboard, it grabs this tool here, which most people know as the eraser tool. Experienced people call it the evil tool. They don't want to use that or try to avoid using it, because here's the problem. If I come over here with the tool, make this a little bit bigger, and I click and drag, I'm erasing the pixels on this layer. It's like me taking an X-Acto knife and cutting out that red sheet of paper and pull that circle out, I'm looking through the hole and I see the yellow layer below it. So that's what we see right there. So if I go to this layer and I hold the Alt key down or Option on a Mac and I click on this, it hides all the other layers. This is what that layer looks like. I'll do Alt click again. And again, that would be Option click on a Mac to get all your layers visible again. Okay, with that shown to you, if I hide this and then I do this, I'm on the yellow sheet of paper and I grab that eraser tool and I do this, I see now the white sheet of paper below. If I hide that and I go to my background layer, another rule you need to know is you cannot erase a background layer. I can do all I want to do there. It won't happen. If I go back here to turn it off, now it's a normal layer. The answer is yes, I can make that transparent in that area right there. I'm looking through the hole, but there's nothing below that. If I go back to, again, layer, new, let's convert that to a background layer. I'm going to get that because a background layer will not support transparency. Only your normal layers here will do that. Okay, now that I have that done to show you, this is what we want to avoid is the evil tool, the eraser tool. And the reason is this is permanent editing. If I close out of this, come back tomorrow and go, oh, shoot, I erased too much. Too late. It's over with. There's nothing I can do. So here's a better technique. I'm going to go back to, let me hide that. And let me go back over here and fill that in again with the yellow. And we'll go back over here. And I got to make sure I'm on red. So I'm going to click here. And let's make that somewhere in the red spectrum. Okay, so there's my 3 sheets of paper. Okay, a better way of doing this non-destructively is to do something called a mask. And I'll be using a mask a few times on different projects here. But to do a mask on the layer, what you do, I'm going to hide this one right now, and I'm going to go to this layer right here. You come down here and choose this square. It's a white box with a black circle in it. Click on that. That gives you this white area, and that indicates it's a mask. You got to make sure you're on the mask. And if you grab a paintbrush, so B for brush, and I go in here and I click and drag, I am painting, let me make this a little bit bigger and a sharper edge there. I'm painting on the mask in black. And the basic rule here, by the way, Alt click, Option click on the mask, you can visually see it. White reveals, black conceals. So what does that mean? Well, that means that when I'm painting in black, and I gotta make sure, again, my chip colors here are black and white. When I'm painting in black, it's hiding the yellow content on this layer, and it's revealing the underlying information, which is the background layer. If I made a mistake, let's say I closed out, saved this, came back tomorrow and go, oh, I took out too much information. X on my keyboard. What X will do is flip-flop my chip colors. So X on the keyboard, I now am going to be painting in white. So if I go back here, make sure I'm on the mask. If I'm painting back in white, I'm bringing back that original information. Okay, so again, on a mask, white reveals, black conceals. So if I go on this layer, activate it so we can see it, and do the same thing. Let's add a mask, and I paint in black. So I had to hit the X key to make sure it reversed over here, so the black is on top. And I go here, this is what I'm getting. So the key thing about this is white reveals, I'm going to tap on X again, white reveals, black conceals the information. So the black is showing me below it, the white is revealing the content there. So just remember, black conceals the content of a layer, white reveals. Now, even if you did 50%, so again, I'm on this mask right here. If I tap on the number 5, my opacity here is 50%. If I do a click and drag motion here, so, oops, I got paint in black. There you go. So if you take a look at the mask, I'm painting in 50%. Okay, if I'm on the mask here again, let me go back to this normal. We can go to the properties panel here on the far right, and this is the density. We can actually pull back, see what it's doing. So it's adjusting the density of the mask all the way to the right makes it back to the normal out of 100%. And again, if I go to this one, do the same thing, you see what's happening. Also, you can feather. Let me turn this off so we can see that. So we can feather our masks. So you can see I can actually feather that if I want, back and forth. So that's all under properties. So that's the basic of masking. So let me give you an example where you might use it. So let me just close out of this. And I got this from a friend of mine. These two images, I showcased this, I think, a couple of years ago. So I multi-selected both of those and let's open them up. So two separate photos. So I'm going to take this photo here and I'm going to hold the, well, I'm just going to click and drag, let's say. I'm going to click and drag over to this tab here, drop it in, Control T. I'm going to just position that where it is and then just enter on the keyboard. All right, so I got two images, one on top of the other. One is this lady's looking forward, he's looking forward, right? But she is not. If I activate the top layer, well, the two ladies look great, but he's not, he's not looking. So what I want to do is take the best out of these two layers to come up with a final project here. So again, this is not my images, this is my friends. So because I have this, I'm looking at this too, and I turn them on and off. They don't line up really well. So I know to do this, select this layer, hold the shift key down. So both are selected. I'm going to go to the edit drop-down menu and I'm coming down to auto align layers and let it auto align. I'm just leaving it alone on auto. It'll adjust that. So now when I click on the top layer and turn it on and off, you can see how it used the bricks in the background to line this up. Now what I want to do is just add a mask. So remember, here's the box with the circle in it. So I'm going to add a mask there, grab my paintbrush. So B for brush. I want to make sure I'm at 100%. So I see 50% there because that's what I used last time. So 0 on the keyboard to make sure it's 100%. And I want this to be a soft edge brush. So I can do shift left bracket 3 times or 4 times really fast. 1, 2, 3, 4. I know that's a soft edge brush. Or just right mouse click right on the image and you could just make sure the hardness is set to 0. Now that I have that done, I'm just going to go over here and make sure I'm painting in black, which I am. Remember, black conceals the information on that layer. The white is revealing the information. So I'm going to hold the shift key down. I'm on the mask. That turns the mask on and off so you can see what I just did with there. So I actually fixed the picture. So now I can just grab my crop tool, C for crop, to grab the crop tool right here, make my adjustment. Again, I'm just doing this really fast to adjust my, say, composition there, accept that, and there we go. So there's my before, after. Well, let's turn the mask on, before, after, before, after. So I use masking to fix that photo. All right, so that is the first session. Now let's jump into our second session. That is, let me work on multiple layers and show you things like duplicating a layer, transforming a layer, smart object, and other things. Let's get to it. All right, in this session, I'm going to give you some basic workflow techniques in layers. Before I get into that, I want to make sure you understand that this is just basic stuff. There's a lot more to layers than what I'm going to be able to showcase here, but we got to start somewhere, and that's why I'm trying to share the most common things, and then you're going to build your skills, after that. Okay, let's jump into Photoshop, and I'm going to the open dialog box by just double-clicking on my workspace. I'm going to choose that image, hold the Control key down, Command on a Mac, select another. So I'm just multi-selecting 2 or more if you want. But I'm going to just choose those 2, click on Open, and let those 2 open up. All right, so right here, I've got this bird, and right there, I've got a setup. Let's take a look at how this is put together right now. I'm going to hold the Alt key down, Option on a Mac to hide all the other layers except the bottom one. So this is my background layer. The next one, I have a tricycle there. Next one I have is a box. And then I've got grass right there. So if we take a look at this, let's talk about what we just learned in the last session, and that is stacking order. If I took the bike right here, the tricycle, click and drag and move it to the top, now it's right there. If I do that same thing with the box, click and drag and stick it on top, that doesn't look right? It doesn't look natural. We want the grass in front. So I'm taking this. If I click and drag up, now it's in front of the bike. If I take it again, move it to the very top, I'm adjusting that stacking order because it looks better with the box sunk into the grass and also the bike. So that's just an example of stacking order that we looked at earlier. Now, what I want to do is bring in something else, and I'm going to share some, again, workflow techniques for you. So if I click on this tab, I'm going to grab the bird, click and drag and move it over here and drop it in. Now, it just created a new layer. You can see it right here. And with my move tool, I can move this anywhere I want. Now, what I could do is I want to say duplicate this. And there's different ways of duplicating this. If I right mouse click here on the layer, you can choose duplicate layer. And I'll, give it a name, click on OK, and I just duplicated it. If I grab my move tool, there it is. Okay, another way of doing it is on the far right in the upper corner of layers, there's another drop-down menu, and you could choose, again, duplicate layer. That's just like I did before. You could take this and click and drag it down to the plus right here, like if you're adding a new layer. So if I do this, click and drag onto that icon, it actually created another layer. So with my move tool, you could see it. And another way, which is the easiest way in my opinion, is this a shortcut keystroke. Control-J, Command-J on a Mac. I duplicate that a lot. So if you take a look at this, got to make sure I'm on the right layers. Okay, I did this a lot of times. Okay, very simple. All right, so that's a workflow technique. Some choices you have. I'm going to undo these. Another thing we should know. In fact, let me get it go one more time. So there's the bird by itself. Is if I duplicate a layer, Control-J, Command-J on a Mac, and I have my two birds right there. If I want to resize these, I'm going to do Control-T. Whoops, sorry about that. Control-T, Command-T on a Mac. That'll activate your free transform tool. And I could click and drag to make this bigger or smaller. So again, I don't know the resolution of this. If you make it too big, they'll start to pixelate and distort. So you have to be careful on that. But I'm going to make this really small, like that. Enter on my keyboard to accept that. Now I'm going to go to the other layer that has the bird on it right here. And I'm going to do this instead. I'm going to right mouse click on the gray area. And I'm going to choose to convert this to a smart object. Now you can see a symbol right there. Now it means this. If I do Control-T, Command-T on a Mac, and I do the same thing, I make this really small, enter on the keyboard, I come back tomorrow, I save this, come back tomorrow, and I go, oh shoot, I didn't need the birds to be that small. So I go on the very top layer here, Control-T, and it'll be a Command-T on a Mac. If I click and drag to make this bigger, you can see now it pixelated and distorted because it threw away a lot of pixel information when I made it smaller. If I go to the Smart Object layer, Control-T, Command-T on a Mac, it did not throw any pixels away. So if I click and drag to make that bigger, enter on the keyboard, you can see that the quality of this is far better than this. So a Smart Object in a simplified way preserves your original pixels of something that you're resizing. Hopefully that makes sense. So let me give you some more workflow techniques. I'm going to get rid of that and that right there. And that is, let me go back to grab the bird like I did before, click and drag onto the other tab to drop it in. And let's say I want to have a lot of birds flying. Well, another way of duplicating this is if your move tool is activated and you hold the Alt key down, and you go over the bird like that and click and drag with the mouse, let go with the mouse, click and drag again. Now my finger's still on the Alt key. Again, Option on Mac. I let go of the mouse. I do this again. I do it again. I do it again. You can just keep going and going and going, and you're adding a bunch of birds, and it automatically makes the layers. If I select all the layers that have the birds on them, which is this one right here, hold the Shift key down, come to the very last one, and now I can do Control-T, Command-T on a Mac if I want. Click and drag to resize these. Move them wherever I want. Enter on the keyboard. But I'm going to make a suggestion here. If you're building a lot of stuff and you've got a lot of layers and like all of these are birds, I would consider doing this. Let me do this again. Click on the first layer that has your birds. Hold the shift key down, click on the last layer so it selects them all, and then do this shortcut keystroke. Control G, Command G on a Mac, and that's creating what's called a group. I can go over here and double click and just type in, say, birds. So that way, if I come back to this tomorrow or next week, I know that in this folder, if I turn it on and off, that has 100% of all my birds in there. So that is just a workflow technique. Okay, another way of, when I selected all those layers, you can see a folder right there. That's another way you can just say, let's create a new group. All right, it's just up to you and how you want to do that. So anyhow, again, workflow, I got that organized a little bit better. I can grab my move tool, move the group wherever I want. All right, so I'm just going to leave that right there for now. Okay, another thing I want to talk about is, we talked about Smart Object. We talked about the free transform tool. We talked about duplicating, and we also talked about grouping here. And these are, again, fundamental basic things in Photoshop. Now what we're going to do is take a look at what is a clipping mask and adjustment layers that we have available to us in Photoshop. Are we ready? Let's get into it. All right, this will be the third session in working in layers in Photoshop, so let's dive right in. This is where I left off, and just dropped in the birds over here in this folder. So let me turn those on and off so we can see that. Now I'm on the top of my stack, and we want to talk about adjustment layers, and using maybe adjustment layers with something called clipping masks. So an example, if I come down here, there's something called the Oreo cookie dipped in milk. At least that's what I call it right there. And if I click on this icon, you're going to see all these adjustment layers. And all of these adjustment layers are non-destructive. Now, before I pick one, I forgot to mention earlier, just a suggestion. If you choose a layer, I'm going to make sure I'm on a layer. Excuse me. Right mouse click. And yours is probably set to maybe small or medium thumbnails. And I like to have mine larger. So if I just right mouse click on that again, choose large thumbnails, the thumbnails of your layers become a little bit bigger, easier to see. Okay, so again, adjustment layers. If I'm on the very top of my stack and I go over here and say, let's just choose, I don't know, hue and saturation as an example. If I come over here to properties and I push my saturation up, and we really nuked it, or all the way back, now it's a grayscale. But I'm adjusting everything from this point all the way down. And even the colors here, if I do this, it's shifting the colors of everything. Well, I don't want to do that. I just want to change the color of, let's say, the bike, and that's it. So what I want to do is that I grab this adjustment layer, click and drag, remember stacking order, and I put this on top of this layer that has a tricycle on it. So now that I'm on this layer here, if I do saturation, well, it's doing two things. It's saturating the color of the bike, but also the background. And I don't want it to do the background. I only want it to do the bike. This is where we create what's called a clipping mask. Now, there's different ways of doing it. One way is when you're on the layer here, if I just hold the Alt key down or Option on a Mac and hover between the two layers, you see a symbol that changes. And if I just click with my index finger on the mouse, I just clip that. If I do it again, I unclipped it. If I go over here in Properties, down here, again, make sure you're on the layer, and there's a symbol right there. If you click on that, that also creates a clipping mask, and you'll see the indent with the arrow right there. So what this means is any adjustment, and again, remember, all of these right here, all of these are non-destructive. I'm just picking on hue and saturation just for an example, but it could be any of these. They're 100% non-destructive to your project, which means if I goof up on something here, I can delete that. I'm not hurting the information below. But because that's indented, it only affects the bike layer below. So let me show you. If I go over here to saturation, move it to the left, see how the bike turned grayscale? Nuke it, push it all the way to the right. So I might want to bump up the saturation a little bit and maybe change the color of the bike. Maybe I want it to be that color right there. So I'm changing the hue of that. And notice that when I do change the hue, well, how come it's not affecting like the rest of the handlebars and the white area and the whiteness, say, on the tires? Well, there's no color in black and white at all in grayscale. If there's a tint of color in it, it'll change a little bit, but basically we're affecting color only. So I'm gonna leave it right there. So I turn this on and off. You'll see I'm affecting just the layer below. If I didn't have that clipped, it would affect the bike and the background layer, and I don't want to do that. So just as a repeat here, make sure that you choose these adjustment layers. They're non-destructive right there. Another example might be, let me go to the box just to show you. If I go over here and say, hey, for some reason, I want this black and white, and I only want to affect the box. Let me make sure it's above the box there. So again, I'm going to hold the Alt key down option on a Mac to hover between the two. Click. Now, right here, this layer is only affecting the box. So if I come over here and play the sliders in properties, you can see how it's affecting just the box. And if I realize, oh, I didn't really want that, I'm on that layer, select delete on the keyboard, it's gone. I didn't hurt anything. That's the cool thing. Okay, so that just, again, session 3, what is a clipping mask? How can we use that creatively? Let me show you like I showed a few weeks ago in a landscape project. So let me close out of this. And I need to emphasize that what I'm going to share with you here, I'm going to grab this, and where's the image? Right there. So I'm multi-selecting those two. And so this is the scenery. I did this a few weeks ago. Just to the new people, you cannot call this photography, what I'm going to share with you. Right now, that's photography. I use the camera. But now I'm turning into a photo artist, which is somebody that uses a camera and software to create their art and vision. So I have this tree here with a transparent background already pre-made. I'm going to click and drag and drop it into my landscape image. Let go, Control T, Command T. Now there's my layer, right? I'm going to resize this, reposition this. I'm doing this on this fast side like that. Just want to add some balance or something to the landscape. So because it's not what the camera saw, this is where I'm moving into that realm of now I'm a photo artist, somebody who uses a camera and software to create their art and vision. Now, this looks too bright and too saturated versus the rest over here on the far right. So what I want to do is add an adjustment layer, and I'm going to choose hue and saturation. Now, again, when I do this and I affect the saturation, it's affecting everything. Well, I only want it to affect this layer. So I'll just do it this way. I'm on this layer here. I'll come over here to properties, click on this icon to clip it to the layer below. So now you'll see the arrow pointing down. That means when I do this saturation, it's adjusting just that shrub or tree on the left-hand side. So that's an example of me using a clipping mask. I'll pull this back a little bit. I could adjust the green. It's all up to me to do that. In fact, I'll even go one more, and that is I'm going to add another adjustment layer. And I'm just going to choose, I'll just choose levels. And again, I want it clipped. It's not clipped, so I'm going to come over here to clip it. And so it only affects if I move the sliders. You can see as I move this left to right, what's happening there. And if I want to move this, I might want to move this back a little bit to make it dark, because I can tell by the shadows here that the sun is coming this direction, moving to the left over here. So since I'm on this adjustment layer, it has a mask. B for brush. Grab my brush right here. Make sure it's a soft edge brush. And I might maybe paint in 50%, so I'm going to tap on the number 5. So my opacity changes to 5. And I'm just going to go on the outer edge here, and I'm just going to paint in here a bit. Just on the outer edge. So you can see that if I go back here and I really push in levels, this dark, see what's happening? I'm going to over-exaggerate that. So you can see what's happening there. So here's my mask. And this is what I want to add right there. make it a little bit more realistic. So there's a before, after, before, after. And there's a color before, after, before, after. So that's just an example again of, in this session, using a clipping mask to control certain areas of my project. Now let's get into number 4. This one's going to be a fast one, and that is, what is a visible stamp layer and why would I even use it? So let's get into it. All right, this is session 4, and this is going to be called working with something called a visible stamp layer occasionally in Photoshop. And let's just jump into Photoshop right here. By the way, if you can do me a favor, if you're learning anything here, I know this is basic stuff for beginners, but like the video, subscribe if you have not subscribed, hit that notification bell. Next time I upload a video, you'll get notified on that. All right, so this is where I left off, and I want to do something unique with the blending mode. And I can't, and some masking, by the way, but I can't do it because I got all these adjustment layers. So what I need to do, this is the way a lot of times that we used to do it in the old days because we didn't have the ability to do this. And that is, you would do something called put a ring on the finger. That means I'm committing to my project here. So if I select, say, all the layers here, so they're selected as an example, and I do Control E or Command E on a Mac, I consolidated everything right there in a single layer, and then I'm going to duplicate this and add a blending mode. Well, the problem with that is if I made a mistake and I save this, it's done and over. I can't go back to readjust, say, the shrubbery over here or the tree on the left side. So I'm going to undo that. So Control Z, Command Z on a Mac. So what I like to do, and it's not right or wrong, just personal preference, I don't want to lose my past work in case I change my mind on something. So I want to be at the very top, and I want to do something called a visible stamp layer. So it is Shift, Control, Alt, E like in Edward on a PC. If you're on a Mac, it would be Shift, Command, Option, E like in Edward. And what that does is it consolidates everything on a single layer that it saw when I was at the very top, everything that had an active layer in it. So an example, let me close out of this just to show you. I'm here at the top of the stack. If I turn that off, and here again, I'm at the top of the stack, and I do Shift, Control, Alt, E, again, Shift, Command, Option, E on a Mac, this is what it did. This is my before and after. Well, you can't see it because it's just a duplicate, right? But it is different than this one. Because this one, when I did it, I had this layer activated. When I did this layer, I didn't activate that. I had it hidden. So the point is, a visible stamp layer looks at your entire stack and will consolidate only the visible layers into a single layer. So some people, and I'm not saying what's right or wrong, but they like to do, I'm not sure what I want, so they turn things on and off, and then they do a visible stamp layer. And then they turn things on and off, and they do another one. So now they can compare, hey, do I like this one better or that one better? Again, that's just a workflow technique. But a lot of times, I want to do something like this. So I'm going to delete this one by hitting the delete key. So this one is consolidating everything it saw below. Let me activate that. Okay, so now with that selected, I want to use a blending mode. And we'll talk about blending modes in the very last session. But if I choose like multiply as an example, and then I add a mask to this, and then I grab my brush, B for brush, and maybe drop the opacity down to, by the way, I apologize. I think the last time I said I tapped on the number 5, it didn't make that 5%, it made it 50%. So if I do like 3 on the keyboard, it made it 30% opacity. So if I go over here, click and drag, and I'm painting in black in this area like this, let go, do it again. I'm sort of building on that opacity. I'll show you the mask here in a minute. But maybe I want to get aggressive with the lighting here, and I want to focus just in this area of my landscape. And so here's the mask. If I pull that up, and again, I'm just doing Alt-click so you can see that. Alt-click again. And if I want to smooth it out, I can go over here to Properties and feather that out a bit. So now when I turn this mask on and off by holding the Shift key, you can see the before, after, and my composition before, after, before, after. So again, I'm using masks, but to get this effect, I had to do what's called a visible stamp layer. All right, now we're going to get into the last session, and that is getting to some basic blending options and how to work with that. Are we ready? Let's do it. All right, in the last session, we're going to take a look at working with overlays and blending modes in Photoshop. And just, again, need to emphasize, this is very beginner stuff. There's a lot more to it than I'm going to share with you here, but let's jump into Photoshop. Go to my open dialog box again by just double-clicking on the workspace, and I'm going to play with these two images right here. And with this selected here, I'm just going to click and drag and move it over to the other tab and drop it in there. Control-T, Command-T on a Mac to select this and to resize it so it covers the image. Enter on the keyboard to accept that. Okay, so now if I go over here, your blending mode on this layer is always set to normal. If you go to the drop-down menu and choose like darken as an example, this is called live preview, or you can just scroll down the different blending modes to see what that layer does with the layer below. And every time you do this, it's going to be slightly different because it's all based on the colors of that overlay and the color of your underlying image. So an example, this would be great for like something that's like burning, hot, that kind of stuff. I'm just going to leave linear light alone. You can go over here to opacity, click and drag to pull this down. And there's a lot more other things we can get into, but I'm trying to keep this very, very basic. I'm still working on recording my live class that I did a workshop for many times on overlays and textures and doing different techniques. I'm going to get that course together, hopefully within the next couple of months, and offer it to you guys. But and it'll be no more than $10. Okay, $100 class I did many times. It's going to be $10, and you're going to get all the assets. But this is just basic blending. Now, there's other rules we have to understand when it comes to blending. So let me share that with you to do something, say, creative in our photography. And what I'm going to share with you again, this is being a photo artist, because it's not what the camera saw. So we are using a camera plus software to create our art and vision. So I'm going to grab these two these two right here. And I've got some rain right here, and I got this photo right here. So let me pull back on this, and I want to add some rain to this. So the beauty of the overlay, when you see black, it's easy to see, okay, this is rain versus fog versus a fire, whatever it is. It's hard to see if this was like transparent backgrounds. I'm going to go over here, click and drag, move this over to this image, put it on top, let go, and I need to resize this. So Control-T, Command-T on a Mac. Oh, I don't see where the place handles are at. I can't find them. Well, if I do Control-0, Command-0 on a Mac, it will pull back so you can find these place handles right here. I'm just going to grab this right here in the corner, click and drag to readjust the size, and just make that fit over the image. And then again, anytime you're using an overlay that has a black background, you want to use a screen blending mode. So I'm going to go to screen right there, and there you go. Now, to me, the image looks too bright for, she's in the rain, but it's like, looks too light to me. So many ways you could approach this. I'm just going to do this simple and basic. I'm going to select that layer right there, and I'm going to come over here, Oreo cookie dipped in milk, and I'm going to choose brightness and contrast. Now, I don't have to clip this because this is going to affect the layer below, and that's fine. I want it to affect the background. So I'm just going to go over here to brightness and maybe pull it down a bit, make it a little bit more moody, take my contrast. Maybe I want to move the contrast up a bit. And since this is a layer and it's non-destructible, B for brush. And again, I'm at 30% over there, I see. That's fine. I'll just leave that alone. And I'm just going to go right here on this left side of her face and maybe down here on her raincoat a little bit. So very subtle. Let me turn the mask on and off. You can see what's going on there. And if I turn the entire adjustment, there's the adjustment right there. So again, the thing to remember on this is if you get an overlay and it's a black background, you're going to use screen blending mode. Let me share with you one more. Let me close out of that. And not going to save that. And I'm going to open up this image, which is snow. I'm going to hold the control key down, command on a Mac. Let me grab these two and we'll play with these two images right here. And again, a winter scene, you want to jazz it up. So you have an overlay like this that has snow. Click and drag over the top of that, position it in there. Control T, Command T on a Mac. Let's readjust the size. And again, I've got a collection of snow that I've made. And let me just pull that about right there. All different sizes, and some are like heavier snow than others. Some are like snow flurries, really light. But again, screen blending mode. And there you go. Just sort of added a little bit more to the image right there, a little bit more to the story. And again, you can pull the opacity down if you want, so it's not as severe. Okay, it's all up to you. So let's do that again. I'm going to go to this image and apply the same thing. So let me make this a bit smaller. Go over here, grab the snow, click and drag, drop it in there. Control T. Ooh, I can't see the handles. Control 0. There's the handles right there, so I can grab that, resize that. And just holding the shift key down so I can readjust the aspect ratio and turn the keyboard. And again, same thing here. Go to blending mode, and I change that to screen blending mode. And again, looks like I was outside photographing in the snow. Makes it so much easier if you're really outdoors and you wish it was snowing, but it wasn't, but you have that wintry scene. How easy is that to adjust or to add, to adjust your image right there and add to the story? So again, just to reemphasize this is being now a photo artist, a very minor one. We're adding things that didn't exist when I actually took the shot. So I did use a camera, but now I'm using software to add to my story right there. So hopefully you've learned something here. And again, if you can do me a favor, and that is like the video, subscribe. If you have not subscribed, hit that notification bell. And again, I have to emphasize that this is just all basic foundational stuff. There's so much more to layers, but you really need to get a feel for the basics first. And once you understand that, then you're ready to progress and get into bigger and better things, which I actually share with you as if you look at the different videos I do on a Wednesday. A lot of times I'm doing unique things, and I'm assuming you know the basics and layers, and I'm going to say beyond that right there. Okay, so let's end this the way I normally do, and that is let's get that camera out. Let's practice some of these techniques, by the way. And again, think out of the box, and I mean literally out of the box. Till next time, see ya.